Hello. I don't know how the music sounds, and I don't know if I need to adjust my webcam. I think that's okay. You guys let me know. So, hi everybody. Happy Monday. Happy October. I can't believe it's October 1st. That's kind of nuts. I don't know if I have any announcements. Hello, Shannon. How are you? Good to see you. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'll actually keep my headphones on, but I just wanted to hear the music and see if I still liked it, and I do. It's really nice. So, yeah, hopefully this will be okay. And it should last me a while. It's 3.5 hours, so I think we'll be good. Okay. Get back to chat and OBS. Listening on lunch break. Oh, cool. What are you having for lunch? Hey, Corgi, how are you? Good to see you. Okay. I'm gonna trust that the music is alright. My hair looks ridiculous, but it's actually down for once, so I guess that's okay. Yeah, so we're reading Nancy's Mysterious Letter, number 8, in the original series, but, you know, the rewritten versions. Hi, salad. Leftover Chinese food. Nice. Sounds good. I'm doing well. How are you? I'm doing some writing work. Oh, okay. Well, no worries. I appreciate you being here, but if you need to go and work, that I understand. You love this book, though. Awesome. Hi, Salad. How are you? I'm getting notifications, so I don't know what's going on here. Weird notifications. I don't know. Not good. What's going on, Salad? You're making me worried. What's going on? You know we're here for you, and we love you. Let's see. I think I'm ready to go. So last night I went out with a friend to a cafe that we like here, and it's an Asian cafe, but it's a coffee shop. So I originally ordered a I just got a mocha, like a cafe mocha, but they brought me a green tea something or other, and I was like, I don't think this is right, but I started drinking it anyways, and they brought me what I actually ordered, and I was like, oh, I kind of started drinking this, so she just gave it to me. So I got a free drink, but I couldn't finish it, so I took it home, and now I am trying it again. They're pretty good, though. And it tastes like it was made with soy milk, which is what I asked for in my other one, so I hope it is soy milk. Otherwise, I might have some problems later. Not that you guys need to know that. Don't you like my mug? Hey, Brooke. You have class at 2. Aw. Well, catch up, and have a good class. But thanks for stopping in. Personal things, relationship-wise, I'm sorry, Salad. But you know we're here for you, and you can always DM me if you want to talk about it. And we love you, and we hope you feel better. So I'm trying to figure out if I can remember where we were last time. So we finished chapter 6, and she just talked to Ned, everybody's favorite. And Ned, so the last, you gotta go, okay, well, thanks for stopping by. We love you, and hope your day gets better. So the last thing that happened at the end of chapter 6 was Nancy was on the phone with Ned. I think she was on the phone. Yeah, and they were planning to... Nancy was planning to go up to his frat house during the weekend, and Ned's putting on a play, and they got a coach for the play, and her name is Nancy Smith Drew. And it's the other Nancy that our Nancy has been looking for. So that's where we left off. So chapter 7, it's called The Wrecked Car. Are you guys ready for this? I'm ready for this. I'm excited. I've been enjoying this book so far. It's pretty good. Alright, will you guys let me know how the music volume is? Is it too soft? Is it too loud? I don't think it should be too loud. Like, how's the balance with the music and my voice? Is everything okay there? Just let me know and I can adjust that accordingly. And I think everything else should be good. And I realized that... So, I do like my background that I have here, but I kind of chose it to be like a winter background, and when I was streaming pretty regularly, I like to change my backgrounds based on the seasons. So I need to do something fall, but I just forgot that I was doing that, so I'll have to mess with that later. My water bottle makes noises. Okay. Should be good to go. Alright. We are starting chapter 7. Oh, Ned, do you mean it? Nancy exclaimed. Will you find out if the coach's first name is Nancy? I'm sorry, it was in Smith Drew. Right? Yeah. He promised to do this, and then added, You'll be able to meet her Friday night. If she is Nancy Smith Drew, I won't tell her about the inheritance. I'll leave that for you. Ned said he would call Nancy back as soon as he found out. I won't leave the house until you do, she told him. It was an hour before Ned called back. I didn't learn much, he reported. Miss Drew was suddenly called away, and she won't return until just before the show. Nancy was disappointed, but she knew she must be patient. After all, this was Wednesday. This was Wednesday. Friday evening was not too far away. Ned changed the subject. With laughter in his voice, he said, Who do you think is temporary coach? Bert Eddleton. Nancy giggled. George Fane's date hardly seemed like the type to be coaching a Shakespearean play. He was a blonde, husky football player who was full of fun. I can't wait, Nancy said. Does Bert have a secret aspiration for becoming an actor after college? Ned laughed. I doubt it. The couple talked a few minutes longer, then said goodbye. Nancy's thoughts turned back to her visit at the Skeets home and the information she had received. Suddenly, she told herself, maybe if N. Smith Drew, the coach, is Nancy Smith Drew from England, she went to see the Wilsons where she used to work as governess. If I can only find them. Nancy went upstairs. Hannah Gruen was still hemming the dance dress. Often, when the girl sleuth was puzzled, she talked over the situation with the understanding housekeeper. Now she told her of the latest report from Ned Nickerson. I wish I knew where to find the Wilsons, Nancy said. Have you any hunches? If they summer in Cape Cod, possibly they live in the Boston area, was Mrs. Gruen's first guess. Yes, Nancy said slowly. But lots of people from the other places go there too. What would be your second choice? How about Springfield, Massachusetts? Seems really random. After a 10-minute conversation between them, Nancy came up with an idea which Mrs. Gruen thought was very plausible. Nancy Smith Drew had been in New York studying for the stage. If the N. Smith Drew at Emerson was the same person, she had no doubt succeeded in finding a place in the theatrical world, at least as a coach. There was a good possibility that the Wilsons, for whom she went to work as a governess, lived in New York City. I put a New York City phone book in your father's study, Mrs. Gruen told Nancy, but I'll bet there are hundreds of people named Wilson in it. True. It's New York City. Nancy hurried off. One look at all the Wilsons in New York City would have discouraged a less determined person. She took a pencil from her father's desk and began to check likely addresses. How would you know? Yeah, that's not gonna happen, Nancy. Let's see. She told herself that if the Wilsons could afford a governess, they were probably well-to-do. This meant they would live in one of the nice areas of the city. Consequently, Nancy eliminated all the business and professional addresses. Wouldn't they have been separated anyways? Her list of likely candidates turned out to be long, but she decided to start telephoning each one. You cannot do that now. Our phone bill will be tremendous, she told herself, as call after call was made with no success. Half an hour later, Nancy heaved a sigh. Should she go on? Many things might have happened to the Wilsons she was trying to locate. They could have died or moved away. But I mustn't give up, Nancy told herself, and began to dial another number. When a woman answered, Nancy said, "Is this Mrs. Wilson?" "Oh, okay. Bye, Shannon. Thanks for popping in. I hope you have a good rest of your day." Is this Mrs. Wilson?" "Yes." "I'm making a long-distance call to you to ask a question. Did you ever employ a governess named Nancy Smith Drew?" Nancy held her breath as she waited for the answer. "Who is calling?" the woman asked. "Believe it or not, my name is also Nancy Drew. By chance, I heard of Nancy Smith Drew, and I'm trying to locate her. I received a letter by mistake which belongs to her." There was a pause, then Mrs. Wilson said, "This is a great coincidence. Yes, a Miss Nancy Smith Drew worked for us a few years ago. She's a very lovely person and an excellent actress. Unfortunately, I do not know where she is right now. Once in a while, she sends us a postcard or a Christmas message. As a matter of fact, it has been almost a year since her last note, in which she said she was moving but did not give her future address." Nancy was disappointed that the actress did not visit the Wilsons, but said, "I'm so thrilled to have located someone at last who knows Miss Drew. I must tell you what was in her letter." "Why, it's none of this lady's business. She has a large inheritance waiting for her in England." "How exciting!" Mrs. Wilson exclaimed. "I'm so glad for her." She and Nancy chatted for a few more minutes, then the woman said, "I'm sure I'll hear from Miss Drew at Christmas time. I'll tell her to get in touch with you at once. Where can she reach you?" Nancy gave her address and telephone number and thanked Mrs. Wilson for her help. As soon as the conversation ended, Nancy went back to Hannah Gruen and told her the good news. "Now I have two good leads. If the coach at Emerson is not Nancy Smith Drew, then by Christmas time we should hear from the right one." Mrs. Gruen smiled. "I can see why you're a good detective," she remarked. "If you don't find hidden gold under one stone, you turn up another." The housekeeper suggested that they take time out for lunch. After eating, the two returned to Nancy's bedroom to see if the evening dress was all right. Nancy kicked off her sports shoes, removed her skirt and sweater, then stepped into the dance dress. Hannah zipped it up. Just then, the phone rang, and Nancy went into her father's study to answer it. Chief McGinnis was calling. "I thought you'd be interested to hear, Nancy, that we found the beat-up car with the license number TJ12796. "You did?" Nancy exclaimed. "Where? And did you find Edgar Nixon, too?" "No, unfortunately. The officer explained that the car had been abandoned and was a complete wreck. We came across it on the road where you saw the man drive across the bridge," McGinnis added. "A little way beyond there was a sharp curve, and I guess he was going too fast and didn't make it. But he evidently wasn't hurt much because he wasn't around, and we've had no report from the hospital or any doctors about a person who needed attention." "The car really did belong to Edgar Nixon?" Nancy asked. "We don't know," McGinnis replied. "It was registered under another name with a phony address. Maybe the car was Nixon's, maybe a friend's. Or Edgar could be using aliases," Nancy thought. The chief said if he had any further report, he would telephone Nancy. "We're still looking for a man who wears a camel's hair coat and hat, but we suspect that by this time he may have changed to something different." "Perhaps," said Nancy, but if he had a beat-up car and is demanding money from his brother Ira, I'd say he isn't very well off. Men's winter overcoats are expensive, and I wonder if he could I can't talk. I wonder if he could afford 2 of them. Chief McGinnis laughed. I admire the way your mind works, Nancy. What you just said is very true, he chuckled. I guess we'll keep on looking for a man in a camel's hair overcoat and hat. As Nancy started back to her room so that Hannah Groan could look at the dress, the front doorbell rang. I'll get it, Nancy called. As she walked toward the stairway, Nancy realized that in her stocking feet, the dress was pretty long. Just as she reached the top step, Nancy stepped on the front of the gown. She heard a loud rip and gasped. At the same moment, she lost her balance and pitched forward. So dramatic. Nancy falling down the stairs. Sorry, I'm answering a text. We're apparently getting a package today, but we didn't order one, so not sure if it somebody sent something or trying to figure it out. Gonna have to heat that up again. Alright. Chapter 8. Disheartening Request. As Nancy pitched forward, she made a wild grab for the banister of the stairway. Though she swung around and almost lost her grip, Nancy managed to keep from falling. How stupid of me, she chided herself. Yeah. And went on down the stairway. Nancy looked at the big rip in her lovely dress. Could it be mended without showing? Oh, I hope Hannah can do something with it. She finally reached the bottom step and went onto the front door. When Nancy opened it, she was greeted by a grinning little boy. Hello, said Tommy Johnson. Hi, Tommy, Nancy replied. What are you holding behind your back? She asked. A surprise, he said. For me? Maybe. You know you promised me a detective badge for helping you. So I did, said Nancy. Come in, Tommy. I'll get it for you right away. Nancy hurried off to the dining room where there was a closet that held all sorts of knickknacks. Among them was a toy detective badge, which someone had given her at a party for a joke. She carried it to Tommy, who took it but still kept one hand behind his back. Do you like it? Nancy asked. Sure I do. Would you put it on me, Nancy? After that, I'll show you what's in my other hand. She pinned the badge onto his heavy sports jacket, then asked, Have you brought me something exciting? It's what you say at Clue, Tommy replied stoutly. From behind his back, he took out a man's rather worn shoe. Tommy explained that his little friend Billy down the street had picked it up. He saw it fall out of the yellow coat man's car trunk, the little boy explained. He just told me about it. I thought you might want the shoe, so I promised him some candy if he gave it to me. Do you have some candy? Nancy laughed and patted Tommy on the head. Indeed I have, and you shall have some as well as Billy. This is good detective work, Tommy. Keep it up, and maybe someday you'll be a police chief. Oh boy, that would be something, Tommy replied. Nancy went to get 2 small jars of hard candy. She called them her emergency treats for just such occasions. Who keeps candy on hand for kids like that? I mean, unless it's Halloween. When she returned, Tommy's eyes expanded. You mean I can have one whole jar and Billy can have the other? Nancy nodded. I think you both earned this reward. Tommy went off, declaring that he was going to hunt for more clues to the yellow coat man. I hope you don't catch him too soon, he called over his shoulder, and Nancy giggled. After she had closed the door, Nancy looked at the shoe thoroughly. She could see no identification of any sort. But probably the police can find something, she thought. I'll call Chief McGinnis and see what he has to say. Fortunately, he was in his office. I'd say it's an excellent clue, he told her. But don't bother to come down here now. Tomorrow will do." Then Nancy climbed the stairs and showed Hannah the rip in her dress. The housekeeper said she was glad Nancy had not been hurt. She looked at the tear for some time. "You really made a good job of this while you were at it," she commented. "Well, take the dress off and I'll see what I can do with it." Nancy said first she would slip on shoes with heels to see if the length of the dress was all right. She found it was, then took off the dress. Hannah turned it inside out. "Good thing this rip is near a seam. It won't hurt to make the skirt a little narrower. I'll just put in a whole new seam." "Oh, you are a darling," Nancy said, and gave the housekeeper a kiss on the cheek. Then she told Mrs. Gruen about the shoe. "It dropped out of the car that we think belonged to Edgar Nixon." The housekeeper said. "I hope that shoe gets out of here in a hurry. I'm sure it's contaminated with bad luck." "Why, Hannah, I've never heard you speak like that before." "I can't help it," the housekeeper replied, starting to baste a new seam in the dress. "The man is no good, and I don't want any of his belongings around here." When she finished sewing, Hannah laid the dress down and announced that she would have to start dinner. Nancy went downstairs to help her. She set the table and prepared a salad of tomatoes and cottage cheese. "I won't put the steak on until your father comes," Mrs. Gruen remarked. Nancy heard a step on the back porch. "I guess you can broil the steak now," she said, moving toward the door. She opened it, and her father entered. He kissed her, said good evening to the housekeeper, then beckoned for Nancy to follow him. After he had hung up his coat and hat in the hall closet, he led the way into the living room. The two sat down. "You have news?" Nancy queried. "Yes, it's a mystery to me. Maybe you can figure it out. I had a cable late this afternoon from Mr. Bates Jones." The lawyer hesitated, and Nancy sensed that what he was about to say was not going to please her. Finally, he told her. "You and I have been discharged," he said. "Discharged from what?" Nancy asked. "The Nancy Smith Drew case." "You mean they found her?" Nancy cried, astonished. Mr. Drew shook his head. "That's the mystery. The cable said someone else was putting them in touch with Nancy Smith Drew, and that you and I could give up the case." Nancy was amazed. "That's all the cable said?" "Yes." "Well, I think it's pretty abrupt when you have been so nice to make overseas phone calls to him." Mr. Drew smiled. "Cables cost money. Perhaps Mr. Bates Jones will follow his message with a letter of explanation." Nancy thought this over. Intuition told her that there was something quite unnatural about the whole thing. "What's on your mind?" her father asked. "Well, I think something phony is going on." "You mean the cable?" her father asked. "No, but I just have a strong hunch that there might be a fake Nancy Smith Drew posing as the real one." The matter was discussed later with Hannah Gruen, who was inclined to agree with Nancy. "Call it woman's intuition, if you like," she said. "If I were you, I wouldn't let it drop here." "Perhaps you're right," Mr. Drew said. "I'll telephone to Mr. Bates Jones in the morning and see if he will give me more details." "May I be there when you make the call?" Nancy asked. The lawyer smiled. "I'll make it from here before I leave for my office. I'd like you to hear what's said." Directly after breakfast the following morning, Mr. Drew put in the call to London. He had to wait several minutes before being connected with the lawyer there. Mr. Drew explained that he and Nancy did not want to go against Mr. Bates Jones's wishes, but were calling to find out if the real Nancy Smith Drew had been located. "We have some good leads to her ourselves," Nancy's father said, "so your cable was a great surprise." Nancy, who was seated near the phone, could hear the answer plainly. "We appreciate your..." British accent. Terrible British accent. "We appreciate your great interest in all the trouble you have gone to," Mr. Bates Jones said. "But we have had a communication from an American detective agency that for a fee they will tell us the secret whereabouts of the heiress." Mr. Drew frowned. "But how did they learn you're looking for her?" "That we don't know, but we have no reason to believe the firm is not telling the truth." "Perhaps I could be of help to you," Mr. Drew said, "by looking up this agency. It's just possible that a thorough investigation might be to your advantage." There was a long pause. "Well," the London lawyer finally said, "I think it best not to divulge the name." Nancy and her father looked at each other. This certainly was a brush-off. Before saying goodbye, Mr. Drew added, "Frankly, Mr. Bates Jones, my daughter and I are very suspicious about this. I advise you not to part with any money until the whole thing has been thoroughly investigated." There was a loud exclamation at the other end of the wire. Finally, the London attorney said, "Thank you for your advice, Mr. Drew. I will talk to my partner about the case and let you know the result." When the conversation had ended, Mr. Drew said he must hurry off. After he had gone, Nancy settled down in a big chair to think. Intuition told her she must not give up the case. Yet, what else could she do? Suddenly, she remembered something and thought, "I still have another case, Edgar Nixon, and the money stolen from Dad's registered letter. I can work on that." End of chapter 8. Hi, Terry. How are you? Good to see you. So Nancy keeps a jar of candy for kids on her person? I guess I do keep treats for Twix on me when I go out with her. Maybe Nancy thinks kids are like dogs. Yeah. Well, that's kind of how she talked to them, I guess. That's what it felt like. Welcome for clapping. Terry, how does the music sound? Is it too low? Is it okay with where my vocal audio is, or does it need to be, I don't know, just let me know. Oh, you have info? Who's a good boy? Yeah, that's honestly kind of how it feels. Oh, there you can see Chloe and Rachel. I should move them to the other side though, so you can actually see it. I don't have my volume up too high. I can hear it fine, and with a volume adjustment, I can hear the music fine. Do you mean on your end or my end? Like, should I turn it up a little? I'm going to move them over. Oop, Chloe's falling over. What the heck, Chloe? There we go. My head is still, like, right in the way. I could move it down. Your end is fine? I had to adjust mine. Okay, thank you, Terry. Thank you for checking. I don't know why there's another mouse over here. This might look better. Well, now it doesn't matter because the lighting is so bright back there. Where are the Sean and Daniel figures? No spoilers, I don't know yet. I haven't played. That was just what I got for pre-ordering Before the Storm. Yeah, you really can't tell. I guess I could put it over there. Anyways, doesn't matter. All this will move eventually anyways. That's about all I know. 2 characters are named that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, are we ready to start chapter 9? The title is He's Not a Suspect. Okay. The ringing of the telephone brought Nancy out of her meditation. The caller was Ira Nixon. He sounded very weak. Is something the matter? Nancy asked quickly, fearful that the mail carrier had taken a turn for the worse. Will you please come over right away? The old man asked. Nancy promised to leave immediately. She went to the kitchen to tell Mrs. Gruen where she was going. I hope he isn't worse, the housekeeper said. The poor fellow's probably starved. Nancy, I want you to take him a jar of the fresh vegetable soup I prepared for tonight's dinner. I'll be happy to, Nancy said. Hannah ladled some of the soup into a jar. She then put it in a paper bag, but before handing the package to Nancy, she said, And don't forget to take that old shoe out of here. Nancy laughed. It's going to police headquarters as fast as I can get it there, but I must go to Ira's first. 15 minutes later, she arrived at Ira Nixon's little white house. The front door was unlocked, and she let herself in. The mail carrier, haggard and worried-looking, sat in a rocker near the fireplace. He explained that he had had a chill, and one of his neighbors had come in to build a fire. Everybody is so kind to me, except my brother. He gives me orders every time he comes here. Nancy sat down. Did he come to get money from you? Ira Nixon shook his head. Not this time, he said, and that's why I sent for you. Here's what happened. Edgar came here about an hour ago. As soon as he'd gone, I tried to get you on the phone, but it was busy. My brother was all dressed up as usual, and he has a new car. It's red. Nancy made no comment about the new car, but she was thinking hard. Yes? She urged Mr. Nixon, who had stopped speaking. Go on. Nancy, that boy had nothing to do with my hard luck. I'm sure of that now. The postman continued. He said he came here as soon as he heard about the mail robbery. He was as sympathetic as you are. Wanted me to give him some of my inheritance to hire a private detective and clear up the whole matter. Have you received all of your inheritance? Nancy asked. Not a cent. I told him that. Ira Nixon went on to say that Edgar had tried to talk him into handing over any money he had on hand. He said he would take care of all the details of hiring a detective, but some cash would help a lot. Nancy had her own idea of just how much detective hiring Ira would have received for the money, but she said nothing. So you see, Ira continued, you were all wrong about Edgar. He's not a suspect. He knew nothing about the stolen mail. He's too dictatorial to suit me, but I certainly can't say he's a thief. Nancy made no comment, but asked, Did your brother happen to say where he's staying? Oh yes, there's no secret about that, Mr. Nixon went on. He's boarding up in Ridgefield. He even gave me his address. I have it written down here. Wait a minute. Here it is. Ira took a slip of paper from the pocket of his bathrobe. He boards with a family named Himmer on Harrison Street. Nancy got up to leave. By the way, did your brother ever mention a girlfriend? Not until today, the old man replied. Edgar says he's going to marry a rich girl very soon. What's her name? He didn't say. Nancy wondered if it could be the English Nancy Drew. In any case, she decided to go to Ridgefield right away and see what she could find out. Before leaving, Nancy asked if Edgar Nixon were employed. His brother shrugged. We never discussed his affairs. He was always well-dressed and had a car, so I guess he made a good living. Further suspicion ran through Nancy's mind. It seemed most unnatural for a brother to be so uncommunicative. It was just possible that Edgar's way of earning a living was too shady for him to reveal. After saying goodbye to Ira Nixon, Nancy drove directly to police headquarters and asked to see Chief McGinnis. She was told to go right into his office. Hello, Nancy, he said. You've been neglecting us lately. He grinned and added, I thought you'd have the mystery of the missing mail solved by this time. Not quite yet, Nancy replied, but I do have some interesting clues. Here's one of them, she said, handing over the worn shoe to Chief McGinnis. Okay, here's a picture that says, here's one of the clues, said Nancy. It's always hard to do this. There's the picture. I don't know if it's focusing very well, but Nancy's handing the shoe to Chief McGinnis. Nancy went on to bring the chief up to date about all the information she had on the suspect. I'm going to drive up to Ridgefield and do a little investigating, she said. If I turn up any valuable clues, shall I get in touch with you or the Ridgefield police? You'd better tell the chief up there. Directly after lunch, Nancy phoned Bess and George and asked if they could drive over to Ridgefield with her. George said at once she would not miss it for anything. Is this a dangerous assignment? Bess queried. Nancy laughed. I haven't heard yet that Edgar Nixon gets rough, but then you never can tell. At once, Bess knew she was being teased. I'm not chicken. When do you want me to be ready? In half an hour, okay? I guess I could put on some lipstick and powder and get my hair combed by that time, Bess replied. Before leaving, Nancy called her father to see if any further word had come from England. She was told no. I guess we'll just have to wait for a letter, the lawyer said. Nancy then told him of her proposed trip to Ridgefield and the new clues she had picked up. Good for you, her father said. Well, I hope the next time I talk to my daughter, she'll have lots of good news for me. I'll try hard. A few minutes later, Nancy set off. She picked up George first and then went on to the Marvin home. Bess was not waiting for her in front of the house, so Nancy honked the horn. Her friend did not appear. A look of disgust came over George's face. That cousin of mine never watches the clock. She's probably writing letters and making phone calls and doing a lot of things, and here we are waiting. Nancy tooted again. When Bess still did not come outside, she got out of the car and went to the front door. At that instant, Bess opened it. She apologized for being late and said she had just finished talking to Dave Evans, who had called her from Emerson. I have something interesting to tell you, Nancy, she said. Ned tried to phone you, but you'd already left the house. I'm glad Dave caught me. What's the big news? Nancy asked, trying not to be impatient. Bess explained that the young woman who was coaching the Shakespearean play and was known as Smith Drew was indeed Nancy Smith Drew. How marvelous, Nancy exclaimed. Ugh! My hair is driving me nuts. Let me just do that. There's more to it, Bess went on. As the two girls reached Nancy's convertible, she related the first part of the message to George. Then she added, Nancy Smith Drew has gone to Ridgefield. Ridgefield? Nancy cried out. The three girls stared at one another, the same thought flashing through their minds. Was it merely coincidence that the actress and Edgar Nixon had gone to Ridgefield at the same time? Or had she perhaps been drawn into some kind of racket with the suspect? Bess exclaimed, Wouldn't that be awful? George expressed a further thought. Maybe Miss Drew found out he stole the letter from England and went to Ridgefield to get it. Bess looked puzzled. Are you trying to say Edgar plans to keep her from learning about the inheritance? Could be, George answered. I wouldn't put anything past that man. Nancy nodded. All the suspicions she had had about Edgar Nixon now came back to her. Of course, all this doesn't explain the money sent to Dad, which was stolen, she said. Edgar's a slick one, George remarked. Nancy was worried. Girls, I'm afraid that he intends to marry Nancy Smith Drew, perhaps in Ridgefield, and enjoy the inheritance that is coming to her. How despicable! Bess cried. And Miss Drew, I'm sure, is too nice a person to be tied to a dishonest husband. George grinned. In any case, we'd better get to Ridgefield as fast as we can and stop the wedding. End of chapter 9. That English Nancy Drew wanting to marry Edgar. Real name, Nedgar. Is that their ship name, Nedgar? Welcome for clapping. Ooh, hang on, I have an important email. Ooh! Ooh, exciting! Oh, okay. Interesting. Saturday. That's gonna be difficult for Sarah. I'll go ahead and tell you guys. So Sarah and I, my best friend Sarah, Mrs. Norris the cat, we have been planning on doing best friend tattoos for a long time, and we finally, there's an artist that we've been wanting to book with, but she's like always booked up, and she finally opened her books, and she has a very like specific method of picking people, because instead of doing first come first serve, she's like doing the projects that she is interested in, and she likes ours, so she's gonna do ours, and I'm very excited to hear that. But I need to get with Sarah and see if that's gonna be possible for her to do, because it's on a weird time. It's probably during a time that she would theoretically be working, so I'm not sure. But that's very exciting that we got our project picked. It's gonna be Star Wars related, and I'll be like really excited to show you. So hope you can make it work out. I'm gonna text Sarah real quick, just because there's like a limited time to respond. So. Okay, sending email. Very, very exciting. Okay. Sorry for that interruption. We will continue on with chapter 10. The title is Search for a Bride. Okay. It's starting to snow, Bess remarked as a few flakes hit the windshield of Nancy's convertible. Before leaving home, she had put the top up because the day was cloudy and raw, with a hint of stormy weather. Bess went on, "Oh, I hope it won't be bad. Nancy, does this car have snow tires?" Before Nancy could reply, George spoke up. "Bess, you have so little faith in people. Of course Nancy would have snow tires, and good ones at that." Her cousin defended herself quickly. "After working with Nancy on all the mysteries she's asked us to help her solve, you know, even the smartest people can be forgetful sometimes." Nancy laughed. "You girls have driven with me in snowstorms many times. Nevertheless, I promise to be careful." "Oh, it's getting to be worse fast." Due to the storm, it took longer to get to Ridgefield than Nancy had hoped, but she was buoyed up by an exciting thought. Soon she would either come face to face with Edgar Nixon or find out whether or not he was married. When the girls arrived on the outskirts of Ridgefield, the snow was deep. Nancy asked directions to Harrison Street. She found it blocked off by a snow removal machine which had stalled. Nancy turned down a hill and parked near the foot of it. The three girls climbed back up, turned right on Harrison Street, and trudged along the unshoveled sidewalk. Finally, they came to Mrs. Himmer's guest house. By this time, the girls were covered with snow. Before stepping onto the porch, they brushed off what snow they could and stamped their boots. Nancy rang the bell. In a minute, it was answered by a plain-looking woman in her 60s. She looked surprised to see the three callers. "What can I do for you?" she asked. "You lost or just cold?" The girl smiled and Nancy replied, "We're all right. We had to park on the next street, so we got covered with snow walking up here. Is Mr. Edgar Nixon at home?" "Why, no," Mrs. Himmer answered. "What do you want to see him about?" "When will he be back?" Nancy replied, deliberately evading the woman's questions. Mrs. Himmer surveyed her callers from head to toe before saying, "You look like nice, honest young ladies. The answer is that Edgar Nixon moved out this morning." "Oh," the three girls chorused. "Did you know ahead of time he was going?" Nancy queried. "No, I didn't," the woman said. "He never hinted at such a thing. As a matter of fact, he seemed quite happy here. But then, I suppose when you inherit money, you want to move to better quarters." The girls tried not to show their excitement at this statement. Nancy said nonchalantly, "So Edgar inherited some money?" Mrs. Himmer became more talkative. "It's kind of cold for me standing here. Won't you come inside?" Nancy and her friends followed the woman. She led them to her living room, which was cheerful despite the dull day. "Mr. Nixon didn't say where the money was coming from," Mrs. Himmer went on, "but he told me it was a big sum, and now he was going to change his type of work." "What sort of work did he do?" George asked. "That I don't know," the woman replied. "Mr. Nixon was kind of mysterious about his affairs, but I suspect he was in some mail order business. He received lots of letters. Nancy could see her excellent clue fast petering out. No doubt Edgar would have notified the post office already of his change of address. Finally, Nancy asked the question that was uppermost in her mind. Did Edgar Nixon say he was going to be married, Mrs. Himmer? Am I dropping frames? OBS is like turning red, so... But, like, on my OBS screen, it doesn't look like I'm dropping frames, so... That's weird. I think you are a little bit. I'm not sure why, all of a sudden. No, it's not your internet. I'm dropping frames. I'm just not sure why. Or how to make it stop, for that matter. I mean... I'm not really using the internet other than for my music. I don't think it would really affect it that much. Yeah, it just keeps going up on drop frames. I don't want to start my stream over. But it just keeps increasing. Why are you doing this? Yeah. It just keeps getting worse, doesn't it? Oops, I did not mean to do that.